Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know what? Origin stories are important. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in light and conversational fashion. And you know what? If you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go on a limb and assume that you do because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. It's basically all good. And plus, you know, if you need to find an old episode, we archive every one of our shows over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really, really appreciate it. All right. What else? I'm blabbering a bit, but that's fine. You know what? It's the social media. It's late, but you got to follow us on social media too. You follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please come on by and pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest in the world of film, television, basically the moving image in general, because we love to write about it and talk about it, and we love it when you come by and read about it. So please do us a kindness and stop on by. On this episode, we're dealing with origin stories, and I mean it's a big thing, especially in movies and especially in comic books as well. And I mean, full disclosure, I was a comic book guy when I was young, and I think one of my big ones was G.I. Joe. And Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins, the film is now available for premium digital purchase and on premium video on demand from our friends at Paramount Home Pictures Entertainment. And it's also going to be on 4K Ultra HD, Blu-ray and DVD on October 19th. So if you are a G.I. Joe fan like me, I do recommend you go pick it up because it's a fun movie, and it's definitely following the arc of sort of the origins of the story, and it's really giving us some sort of some real character depth to the character of Snake Eyes. And well, we had a real treat on this episode. We got to sit down with the man himself, the man who created G.I. Joe, the man who created Snake Eyes in the comic books, Mr. Larry Hama. And we talked about just the origins of the G.I. Joe comic book, the origins of the character, and sort of the legacy therein, which has been sort of done and reiterated countless times in tons of different versions, and they're all entertaining and fun. But getting a chance to really dial it back to see this iconic character and sort of his birth and his origin story is definitely a fun ride. So I recommend you go check that out. But first, I would check out our talk with Larry, because if you're a comic book nerd, if you're a G.I. Joe nerd like I am, it's a good one. I've been such a big fan of the comic book. I mean, I guess ever since day one. I'm showing my age, but I guess my first question for you is, can you walk me through sort of the idea, like when this sort of came on your desk to sort of start writing this comic book?
Well, Hasbro went to Marvel and wanted they said, well, we want a Marvel comic of G.I. Joe. And Marvel said, well, what's it about? I said, well, we don't know. It's just, you come up with it. and they were very smart about it. They said, well, we're a toy company. We know everything there is to know about making toys, but we don't know anything about comics. You guys are the best guys making comics. You do what you do, and that's okay with us. Problem was, in the early 80s, nobody wanted to work on toy licensed books, because the licensing fee came right off the top of the page rate.
Right.
So if you worked on a toy book, you got paid less. So Marvel asked every contract writer at Marvel, and they all turned the book down. And they asked all the non-contract writers, and they all turned the book down. And Jim Shooter came down the hall at Marvel, and went to every editorial office and asked every editor and assistant editor, and they all turned it down. And my office was the last office in the row. And he got to my office, and I said, I'll take it, because I'd been trying to get writing work for 10 years from Marvel. And, all the editors said, well, you're an artist, you can't write. So it was my way to get my foot in the door writing.
Fantastic. Now, I'm curious, like, obviously, when you're writing a comic based on a line of toys, do you have a predetermined list of characters, or like, do you have to sort of fill in the blanks on this kind of thing?
Oh, no, they provided everything. They said, well, look, these are the 10 G.I. Joe figures for the first year. And they gave me 10 black and white drawings of the action figures, and each one was labeled like infantry guy, or laser trooper, or intelligence officer, and that was it. So all I had was this image and a job. So I had to come up with their names and a code name and their backgrounds and their skills and personalities.
Okay, so I guess that dovetails into my next question, because when I was a kid, Snake Eyes was always my favorite. Snake Eyes was always my number one guy. And I'm curious, like, what was sort of the inspiration for that character for you?
What the inspiration for the character itself? Well, all the characters are sort of based on real people.
Okay.
And Snake Eyes is sort of based on a guy I knew in the army who could speak, but very rarely did. And he was one of these guys. He walked into a room, everybody shut up. And it's sort of a real presence to him, and he could like diffuse situations like that. He was a real badass. He was a door gunner of the first air cav, and a lot of Snake Eyes traits are based on this guy.
Why do you think?
And most of the other characters are based on, people say, oh, no, they're not all based on people I knew in the service.
Right.
A lot of them, are based on, people, who worked at Marvel or whatever. It was. I do that because it helps me keep the characterizations consistent.
Right. Okay.
Then I have something to compare against, and because I'm writing a character. And oh, wait a second. No, my cousin Randy would have never said it that way. So I got a reference point.
Right.
And I think keeping the characters consistent goes a long way towards making the fantasy stand up on its 2 feet and walk around.
Totally. Why do you think the Snake Eyes character has always been one of the more popular ones over the years? Do you think it's just that pure badassery, like you said?
Well, it's a combination of pure badassery and the fact that he's completely covered from head to foot. So no matter what you were, ethnically or whatever, you could imagine yourself as Snake Eyes. And especially since he didn't speak, there were no, there was no, barrier to you having that fantasy.
For sure. And I mean, another thing about G.I. Joe I've always loved is just its female representation, because all the characters are equal. And I'm kind of curious, sort of in the moment when you're writing this comic book and you're writing these very strong and distinct female characters, like, were you kind of aware, or was there any kind of pushback in terms of marketability in that sense back in the day?
Well, nobody else was doing it. But I never liked, these female characters are always standing around with their palms nailed to their foreheads, or constantly taking showers in the X Mansion, and I just, all the stuff about inclusion and stuff was deliberate. I wanted to see more people of color and women, and I wanted them to be part of this fantasy where they're all equal and not the sidekick or the comedic element.
Right.
So they're right up there. Scarlet can lead a mission.
Yeah, for sure.
Roadblock can lead a mission. Any of these characters. They and from their interaction that their loyalty and camaraderie is absolute. That if you're if you're captured or in a real big pickle, Snake Eyes will come and get you.
For sure.
So
No, I mean,
that's all part of it.
yeah, just to put a bow on this, because obviously there have been so many sort of on-screen iterations of G.I. Joe, from the cartoons to now the movies. How does it feel from your perspective to sort of see a live action rendition like this new movie that is trying to sort of pay homage to the lore of G.I. Joe that you wrote in all these comic books over the years?
Well, I think it's stuff is finally beginning to happen like that. And it took them a while for them to realize, oh, maybe Snake Eyes should be up front. I mean, look, it took how many X-Men movies did they have to make before they figured out, oh, people really want to see Wolverine?
That's an excellent point.
People just weren't all that interested in the guy with the beams coming out of his eyes. But it's like when Wolverine was on screen, that was what made the whole thing come alive. And it took them 5 movies or something, and then all of a sudden what goes through their heads? Well, why didn't we do this from the first place?
Well, you know what? I, for one, am glad Snake Eyes is now out in front, because it's a fun movie, and it really just does sort of give people a sense of the real lore that you put into the comic books back in the day. And I'm so glad that the film is out there for audiences to sort of get to experience G.I. Joe now. And thank you so much for the time, and thank you for the work today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.